I'm going to show you a couple of things. First, a new way that I found, a new tool that I found, which is pretty good for removing blemishes that I really like. And we're going to deal with get rid of this acne. Lovely girl, lovely picture, crazy acne. So we're going to fix it. We're going to do it two ways. The acne on her forehead, we're going to use the standard hue adjustment layer and spot healing brush. But then on the acne on her cheeks, I'm going to show you something called the patch healing tool, which I think works really well if the surrounding area is relatively clean. And then we're going to deal with that background, put something much more appropriate behind her, add some blurring to make it actually look like she's in the image and not just paste it on top of it. So let's do that. Let me first start by copying my background, just in case I totally screw things up. All right. Then we are going to, let me go ahead and just isolate her very quickly. Um, I'll just grab my select and mask, selection tool. We'll just do this very, very quickly. Get her towel thing up there. Pick her up like this. Get some more of that. This is just an image I downloaded from the internet, and when I went to the image search on Google, I said, give me only large images. So I've got large images. All right, so this in here, let me alt click and let me alt click. There we go. Okay, let's get that up there. Obviously, very, very fast. All right. We missed a piece. Let me get a little brush tool and add in that little bit right there. Not that big of a deal, but why not? Okay. One of the reasons I'm using this image is because it's pretty clean. Sharp areas on a plain background makes this part very quick. All right. So, lovely. All right. New layer of layer mask. Okay. And there she is. And just so we can see what we're doing, let me go ahead and just add a solid color adjustment layer. Drop it underneath. Oops. Drop it underneath just that. Okay, there she is. Wonderful. Original, new. Okay. Now, let's go and take care of this acne up top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to get my lasso tool. And this is that hue adjustment layer technique where we get rid of the redness first. Now I could simply just select all of this area once to take care of, and that would work. But the fact is I've got some very discrete areas that I want to target, so I'm going to just go ahead and just lasso those areas, and then holding my shift I can then pick up some other selections that are not continuous, because the shift lasso is going to allow me to add to the selection area. And let me just grab this over here also. All right, so those are the areas that we're going to work on. Now, having done that, let me get a new layer, and the selection stays active. I'm going to do several things in here. So with the color and then with the healing brush, so I'm going to group these to group this layer to itself. So you see group 5 has one layer in it with nothing on it. And then while the group is active, I'm going to add that layer mask. So the layer mask icon is on the group level, meaning anything I do inside of that group is going to be constrained by that mask. Now, if you ever want to see what areas are actually in the mask, you can always command or control and then click on the mask icon, and it will reveal the selection. And then, of course, when your mask icon is selected, you can add or subtract to it using a white or black brush. All right, Control or Command D to undo the selection. All right, so that's what we're going to work on. Now, let me add an adjustment layer. We're going to do hue saturation because we've got to get rid of those reds first. Because when we use that healing brush tool, we are going to be taking the texture of one area and applying it to the blemish. But it's going to use a lot of the colors of the area we're trying to fix. So we have to fix the colors first. Now, we're trying to get rid of the reds, so let me choose reds, and let me just crank up the hue and saturation so we can easily see the area we're working on. Now we'll use our two sliders below. The top slider is the colors being affected, and the bottom slider is what they're turning into. So reds on the top and that kind of teal something color down below. And I'm going to slide this over until to the left until I am only targeting those reds that we want to fix, about like that. All right, now that I've got my selection, let me put my hue back down to 0. Let me put my saturation back down to 0. And then I'm going to just edge them up until I have a more or less skin tone color. It's not going to perfectly match, probably won't perfectly match the surrounding skin, but it will be more or less a skin color. All right, so I'm going to bring my hue up. If I bring it up too far, there's all that stuff again. So I'm going to just back it up until most of the surrounding greenish is gone. Let's bring the saturation. Let's also bring the lightness up a bit. Let's just lighten those areas. And because I've done that, I need to bring my saturation. Okay. I would say the reds are pretty much gone at that point. It's kind of a brownish color, but that's more or less, that's a skin color. So if you look at these reds down here on our cheeks, that's kind of what we started with, and up here it's more of a brown skin color. So I'm going to call that good. Now, having done that, I'm still inside this group. I'm going to add a new layer in the group, and now I can just come over here and grab my healing brush tool. It's under that little band-aid thing. So healing brush tool. So one thing I've learned, which I think is actually, I'm glad I finally figured this out, is it's not going to bring the color from one area to another. It's only going to bring in the texture. It's going to use more or less the colors that are already there. And that's why we had to get rid of that redness first. So I can click, I can alter, option click almost anywhere to set my source that's going to be applied, as long as it has pretty much the texture that I'm looking for. So let's say we take a look at this. Let's see, what am I on? Let's say we're going to take a look at this one up here first. Okay. Well, I can click anywhere that's got the texture I'm looking for. So that's the one we're going to play with right there. Okay. So I've got my healing brush. Oops. I've got my healing brush tool. I can click. Let's say I come way over here to the other side of her head where it's all in shadow, and let me alter option click there to set my source. Well, when I paint over here, you notice it doesn't bring in the color. It's only bringing in the texture, and it's more or less using the colors that surround that area already. So that's pretty cool. So we can kind of fix that up. And this right above her eyebrows, it's a little rough through there, so I don't want to bring in that smooth texture from the side. I'll bring in something that's kind of in the same general area, paint it in. There, gone. Oh, there's one more over here. So remember, what I'm looking for here is texture. What texture is going to be more or less equivalent to that area? It's probably going to be someplace fairly close by, but not necessarily. There. Cool, eh? So we started with that, and we ended with that. Nice. Yeah, I like it. Okay, before, after. Lovely. All right, let me go ahead and compress that group. Now, let me show you this new tool, the patch tool. The patch tool, unlike the healing brush and spot healing brush and clone stamp tools, cannot work on a blank layer. It's going to modify what is on the layer, which means we have two options. Well, we have three options. One is we can go back to the original image here and make our changes on this one. Not recommended because we're going to end up, it's a destructive technique. It's actually going to change the pixels. I don't want to monkey with that one. Another option is I could just simply copy it, but that also means that I'm copying all that stuff we at the top that we've already fixed. We want that to be addressed. So there's a way that we can take all of these layers and all the fixes and merge them together into a new layer and work on it. And it's actually is going to provide us the best option. So let me just come down here to my main. Let me get a new layer. Okay, it's a blank layer, and this will not work on a blank layer. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to put this above the acne that we just fixed up there. Okay, and then I'm going to tell Photoshop to merge together everything below that point and put it into this blank layer. And the way I do that is I come up here to image and I come down to apply image right there. Now, what are we applying? We can just choose any one of the layers over here, but I want to take all those fixes that we've already done and merge them together into this layer. Now before I do this, I have to be careful. What do I actually want to be included? Because if you'll notice, one of the things that we've already done is that white background. I don't want that white background. I really want just her into this new layer. So I'm going to make that invisible so it's not included. All right, so there's my blank layer, layer 10, and image, apply image, merge it. So anything that's visible is going to be merged into this new layer, which is why I had to turn off that white background. And okay, so you'll see now on this layer 10 here, which is highlighted, there's the icon of this gal. So, and the stuff that we did before on our foreheads already taken care of. So let me turn off the fixes on the pimples on her head, and I'm also going to turn off that background layer. This is the only layer we need now because everything that was previously visible has been dropped into this layer. So we can work right on this one. Okay, so having done that, let's fix this up. So also under these healing tools, the third option down is called patch tool, and I love it. This is pretty much the exact opposite of the clone stamp. On a clone stamp, you say, grab this area over here and paint it somewhere else. Here, we're going to say, target this area and then go out and find what I want to put into its place, just to copy it in. So, some settings, we want normal. There's another normal called content aware. Not recommended. It tends to leave kind of an edge around the fixed area, so normal is going to work just fine. Source, and I've got a little bit of diffusion up here. I've got it set at 5 pixels so it kind of feathers into place and looks very natural. See, if we do content aware, there's no diffusion, but I want it to blend in. So normal, diffusion. I've got mine at 5. Now, here's what we do. It's pretty simple. We're going to start with that highest pimple that she's got, and I'm simply going to select around it, make a selection, and then I'm going to take that selection ring and I'm going to drag it to the place that I want to use here in my target. So I just drag it, and you'll see as I do that, wherever I let go is going to drop right in there. I can put her nostril in there. I can put her lips in there. I can put an eyeball in there, which would be really cool, but looks stupid. Okay, but here's what I want. So I'm going to just let go, and now it drops it into place. So Command or Control D, D for don't select anymore, and there's the fix that's been applied. How cool is that? Let me grab this one. About there. Yep. Let me grab this one. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of following the contours of the lights and the contours of the texture so that I don't drop something in there that's going to look artificial. We don't want this to look like it's been photoshopped. So the area that I want is probably going to be someplace pretty close by, but not necessarily. All right. Oh, I left a little edge there, just a little bit. Okay, not too bad, eh? What the heck? Let's fix that up too. Yeah, not too bad. All right. Now, the contours of the lights and so on is actually pretty important. Let me grab a new layer. Let me grab a brush. Let me get a nice dark color from her nostril. Okay, so if you'll notice, she has a contour in the reds that kind of goes like that. And there's another one down here where you can see a bit more of that facial hair. So as I'm thinking about where do I want to grab from, I have to make sure that it's going to be something which is going to be in kind of those contour bands and is going to look natural when I put it into place. All right, get rid of that. Come back to my layer 10, come back to my patch tool. So let me just blow this one up. Let me grab that. And following the contours of the light, I want something probably a little bit down here. And there we go. It looks very natural. And of course, if I don't exactly like it, like maybe I think I left kind of a little edge hanging out here, I just grab it and use the patch tool to drag something more appropriate into place. Very, very cool. Now, one of the things that you can do, you can actually grab a fairly large area, but you got to be careful that you're able to actually grab from another area which is going to fit that without making some kind of like weird anythings. All right. And let me get this last one. I'm going to kind of come up her cheek a little bit. There. Maybe we're going to do that one. What the heck? We're here. All right. Not too bad. So there's, oops. So there we go. Okay, so first we took care of that acne on the top, like this. Made it look very lovely. Then we merged all of that together, and we used the patch tool to fix the stuff on our cheeks. Well, now that we have fixed the stuff on our cheeks on that merged layer, we can actually make all the rest of the layers invisible because they're already included in the image that we put here. So I can just turn them off. I don't need them anymore. And I could put the white background if I wanted to. Okay, so far so good. Now, let's put her into a better place. She's just not in a good place in her life right now, and she needs to go visit her safe space. So let's give her a safe space. All right, two ways I can drop the background in. One is I can open up another image and then using the move tool drag it into this one. Or I can just skip that step. I can come up here to File, Place Embedded, go find it, which I'd have to do anyway if I'm going to open it up, right? So instead of having to go through this to open it and then drag it into place, I just use the Place Embedded, and boom, it goes in there as a new layer. What the heck did I just did? I don't know what I just did. So let's fix that. All right. I did something silly. Place embedded. It happens. Grab it, place it. All right. Now, let's drag it into place. Let's put up in that corner. I'll use my shift drag from the corner to make sure I maintain the ratios. And about there. I like that. Enter. Now, let's put it below her so she's on top of it. So right now it looks like somebody just took a picture from a magazine, cut it out, pasted it on something else. It doesn't look very nice. So what we need to do is add a little bit of blurring so the stuff at the bottom of the background, which is visually closest to us, is fairly in focus, and then the focus needs to blur out as it goes up the image. So first let's just hide her. Now we're going to come up here to our filters and we're going to go to our blur galleries and find tilt shift. So right in the middle of this tilt shift there's kind of a little target window. That band is going to be the area that's in focus. Well, I want the stuff at the bottom of the image in focus because visually it looks like that's closest to me. So I'm going to do that. All right. Then anything up to that first solid line is going to be in focus. Anything which is above the dotted line is going to be blurred, and in between is the transition area. So let's say we have to be a little bit careful because that wall sort of goes off at an angle a little bit. So the stuff which is kind of angled up is farther away. It needs to be less in focus than the stuff which is down here on the right, which looks like it's closer. So you have to be kind of careful. And I think this is going to do it because it's in that transition zone. So this corner on the bottom right should be right at the point of focus. And then farther up to the left, it's up higher in that transition, so there's more and more blurring going on. I think we're going to be okay. Now this wicker chair on the left is kind of weird because that is the whole back is uh, the same distance from the camera, so it should all have the same focus. But as you can see, the focus is blurring out. So I'm going to try to deal with that just a little bit. And I think I'm going to do that by expanding that transition zone a bit. So it's a bit tricky. Now we could have used the iris blur, so the middle is in focus and the focus goes out, farther. But that's going to create a problem with the bottom of the image. So you kind of have to make some choices and compromise. All right, I'm happy with that. So, okay. It's going to think for a minute. It's going to put it into place. Now let's bring her back up. And there she is, looking like she is now in her safe place. And I think that looks pretty good. So there we go. So 2 ways to take care of acne or pimples, including that patch tool, which I really like, and then a way to drop in the background using place embedded and some tilt blur to make it look very natural. So cool. Hope you find it useful and enjoy. And stop. Stop.